All right, guys, we're back with chapter 13, and we're going to find out maybe who was in that gorilla suit since they know it isn't Boomer. And just a little aside, if you can hear my children fighting across the hall, I'm sorry. It'll maybe add some nice background noise to all of this. They are having a little disagreement. You might be able to hear them. There were several clues like that, but I guess Mr. Crabtree never could tie them all together, although he kept calling people into the office to ask what they saw or heard on Halloween night. He mostly asked the wrong people, though. Teachers and PTA mothers and a bunch of random kids who honestly couldn't tell him anything he didn't already know. Just all the lights went out and you didn't know where you were, and there were a lot of strange noises and spooky stuff, and then a whole ton of candy. Some of those kids also said, "Great Halloween." Mrs. Windlekin had a lot to say, but it was all about Alice's beautiful but ruined costume that never got to win a prize, and about the leftover donuts that were donated to the welfare department. Everybody knew who got them, because the Herdman showed up for the donuts every day for a week. Mr. Crabtree finally quit trying to figure it out and moved on to Thanksgiving, although every now and then you would see him go down to the boiler room and poke around the corners and shake his head. Danny Phyllis and Stuart Walker helped the janitor, Mr. Sprague, move the kindergarten slide back to the playground, although Mr. Sprague said he could have done it by himself. Those boys could have moved it, he said. It was so heavy. Boomer's grandmother's fur coat turned up, along with my father's wash the car pants and the lost and found box with all the hats and mittens and ugly scarves. Nobody knew how they got there, but everybody recognized the gorilla and the scarecrow because they'd followed one or the other to the candy. My mother checked out Charlie's candy and divided it into okay, not so good, and break your teeth off. And since she wasn't the only mother who did this, everybody had a lot of leftover candy. The fourth grade even went to Mr. Crabtree and offered to glue all the candy together in one big pile and set it up in Woodrow Wilson School as a sculpture. Mr. Crabtree said, "No, thank you." He didn't even look at the picture we drew of it, Charlie said. But Miss Seaworthy gave the whole fourth grade extra credit for creative thinking. Alice collected all her extra credit for the Halloween assignments and then announced that her oral report would be how it feels to be almost electrocuted. At first, Mrs. Hazelwood said no. Our oral reports are intended to provide information, she said, that we can all use. I don't think this is information we want to use. Choose another topic, Alice, of more general interest. Actually, near electrocution, Alice's, was the most interesting topic anyone could think of, and maybe Mrs. Hazelwood realized that, so Alice got to give her report, which was very long and very boring. Who but Alice, you had to wonder, could make electrocution boring? Then came the big surprise. Imogene Herdman began clapping even before Alice was through, and pounding and hammering on the kids sitting beside her to do the same. "I couldn't help it," Louis Fraley said. "She had me by the ears and she would have twisted them off. All she said was, 'You better clap or you'll have 2 new holes in your head.'" Naturally, Louis clapped along with Imogene's other neighbors, and they kept on clapping until Mrs. Hazelwood finally came to and said, "Very well, that'll be enough now." I guess she couldn't believe her own eyes and ears, so she took a while. At recess, I found Imogene and her sack of donuts. They had to be pretty stale by then, but they'll make good rocks, she said. "You must have really liked Alice's report," I said. She shook her head. Who cares if her ears sizzled and her toes turned blue? That didn't happen. She never said it did. Would have made a better story. "Imogene," I said, "you didn't even listen to her report. So what was all the clapping about?" "We owe her." She aimed a donut at the back of the building and grinned, sly and sneaky. She blew out the lights. I guess the Herdmans didn't think of that, or if they did, they couldn't figure out how to do it. And then here came Alice, the Christmas tree, to do it for them, and it was the perfect thing. Mysterious candy, missing kids, secret slide, and then just like that, blackout. It was the last straw for Mr. Crabtree, according to my mother. That poor man, she said. The whole point of this was to have a Herdman-free Halloween, and do you know what he said? He said, "I would rather have the Herdmans." Well, he did have them. We all had them. The Herdmans were all over Woodrow Wilson School on Halloween night. In Boomer's gorilla suit and my father's pants. They were the Dracula types in long black coats. Ongoing investigation of thefts at Morgan's Cleaners, the newspaper said that week. Winter garments stolen, perhaps by the needy. After all, who but the Herdmans had enough candy to fill up the boiler room after years of taking everyone else's candy? Who but the Herdmans could run around stealing coats from the cleaners and slides from the playground? Who but the Herdmans would spray paint their cat black? And who else's cat would survive that? Who but the Herdmans would think to do those things? "But why?" Luella said, and there were several suggestions. They did it for the donuts, which was, of course, Alice's idea. They had to get the candy out of the house, as if Mrs. Herdman was a normal clean up that mess mother. They just wanted to ruin the PTA Halloween party. But wait a minute, Boomer said. It was a really great Halloween, and the greatest trick-or-treat ever. So, was that why they did it? We could ask them, I said. But nobody jumped to do that, including me, because if the Herdmans wanted you to know what they had done, they would tell you. And if they just wanted you to wonder about it, you should just wonder about it and keep your mouth shut.